Thank you very much. When your parents come on campus, they will say, you know, it's a very nice campus. It's very warm and friendly, and there's a lot of energy here. But doesn't anybody wear a jacket and tie? And you want to be able to say, yes, there's one stuffed shirt in this university. It's the president. When we see him going across the campus, you can say there's someone wearing a jacket and tie, but not today. I'm delighted to welcome you all here, and I must say, I'm especially pleased to see the number of high school students who are here this morning. And of course, some high school students over there, and many of the UW students who are here have given up part of their reading week to be with us. And special faculty members, today's event is also being broadcast live in the Davis Centre, and so we welcome those in the overflow area. And let me also welcome alumni and friends around the world who are tuning in on MSN, where today's event is being streamlined live. It's wonderful to have you all here today. Welcome. To say that our speaker needs no introduction is probably the understatement of the year, but permit me just a few words as we get the show on the road. We're very happy to welcome Bill Gates back to the University of Waterloo today. He first visited the University of Waterloo in 1989, and again in 2005, when this university was his only Canadian stop on a tour of North American universities. His presence here is motivated by his desire to spend time speaking to you, the talented leaders of tomorrow, about the importance of education, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Only a few months ago, the University of Waterloo was honored to receive a $12.5 million gift from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to help foster the expansion of our visionary Center for Education in Mathematics and Computing, and we're very grateful for that. I believe that Bill recognizes that the success of a university, a corporation, a nation, a society, rests on how well we build talent from the ground up. Early outreach is key. So Bill, on behalf of the University of Waterloo, I welcome you, I thank you for your vision and your generosity, and I'm happy to announce that in honor of your gift and your appearance here today, we'll plant a tree in your name in front of the William G. Davis Computer Research Center. And it brings to mind one of my favorite proverbs, which is, "Blessed is the man who plants a tree, knowing he will not be there to enjoy its shade." Bill, I know your enthusiasm for education in Waterloo remains as strong today as it was in 2005. You visited here last. We're honored to have you here with us today, an individual who personifies the ideals of entrepreneurship we strive for at the University of Waterloo. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Bill Gates.
Thank you. Well, good morning. It's great to be here at Waterloo. They gave me this nice sweatshirt. I guess if you're generous enough, they give you a sweatshirt. You can play around and see what the threshold is where you get to the sweatshirt level. Well, Waterloo is a special place. It's a university that's doing great work. It's been a source of some incredible people who've come and worked at Microsoft. In fact, it's almost always in the top 3 or so universities in terms of the number of engineers that we hire. And many of those have gone on to do really incredible work building software that now hundreds of millions of people are using. So I was looking forward to coming here and talking a little bit about what the frontiers of software are, some of the incredible possibilities that you'll be able to seize because of your great background. Many of you may know that in the middle of this year, I'll make a change in terms of the focus of my time. I'll go from being full-time at Microsoft and part-time on the work of my foundation to being full-time on the foundation and part-time for Microsoft. There'll be some key initiatives I'll stay very involved with, natural user interface that I'll talk quite a bit about this morning, some things around deep algorithms and search, so still very much loving technology. In fact, my work for the foundation will be very involved with technology, both breakthroughs in medicine and the use of software, computers, cell phones to reach out to the very poorest. I think there's some amazing things that can be done. They need a little push to get them to be done right because the market signals aren't there the same way they are for the richest. But that's partly why I want to put time into it and find partnerships and push things forward. So July 1 will be a transition for me. You know, I'll have my last day at Microsoft, and that's a place I've worked full-time since I was basically 17 years old. Some of my friends were worried that that would be a tough day for me, that, you know, what would I do my last day? And so they helped put a video together to get me comfortable with this change. Let's go ahead and take a look at that.
It is a day the industry never thought would come. Join us all day as we report on Bill Gates' last full day at Microsoft.
It's been in the planning for the past 2 years. He'll still be active as chairman. It's hard to believe it's really here. Yeah, I think Bill's ready for his last day. He's worked pretty hard, saved a little bit. He is completely focused.
I mean, Bill's been going all out for more than 30 years, so not having a completely full schedule every day has been a little, well, interesting.
Never doubt the magic of software. That's right, listen to Chewbacca.
You know, after all these years, he's finally taking work-life balance seriously. He's even got a personal trainer.
Curls.
4.
Girls.
Curls.
4.
Girls.
Alright.
Things we want to be. All right. I am tuberculosis. Yes. Bye-bye tuberculosis. Yeah. Headbutt. 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 There we go.
Feel yourself going back, lean a little forward. Just think high, H-I, to the sky. You and I, right now.
Yeah, Bill's always been a bit of a ham. But more importantly, it's the creative risks he takes that really set him apart.
Big pimpin', I'm Bill G. Big pimpin', yeah, you know me.
You got it. Killed it, Billy G.
Hey, let me get one thing straight with you. You can retire and then unretire?
Exactly. Gotta keep him guessing.
Thanks, Jay.
No, it was great. Not so much. Couldn't break his heart, though. Somebody gotta tell him. It's horrible.
Welcome in. Here, just take that. Hello, Bill? Yeah. Bill, I'm a little busy here.
Dude, wasn't that the craziest riff you've ever heard?
Oh, for f***'s sake. Bill, we've talked about this before. We're full up in the band, Bill. All positions are filled. I know, but I can't just replace Edge because you got a high score on Guitar Hero, Bill.
Bill's always been a big fan of the movies, but he's probably gone a bit too far with this whole audition reel thing.
Yeah, Bill, I talked to Clooney. I talked to Clooney myself. I had him on the phone. I heard his voice. It was George Clooney. I helped put him in ER. I know George Clooney. It's George Clooney. Well, fine. Talk to him yourself.
I heard, no, we're just not doing an Ocean's 14. Well, no, but if we were doing one, then we would hire you. Yes, we're not doing one. Right. That's okay. No, we're not doing a sequel to Syriana either. Everyone died.
Hey, I was thinking the last time I was on the show, I thought it was really successful.
Yeah, no, you were great on the show, man. We loved it. It was, although, you know, you did kind of run off at the end, like I, had monkeypox.
Bill Gates, Windows Vista on sale. Oh, he's leaving. He can't just leave.
The only thing is, Bill, and I never said anything, but you never gave us our mic back. And, I hate to say anything, but we only have 3. So.
No,
There's never been any animosity between the two of us about who's number one, who's number two. I never give it a thought. So when Bill called and told me he needed some temporary office space during the transition, I was glad to help.
Working on this new malaria vaccine. The interim results.
All right, we got 1 chili cheese, 1 bacon cheese, 2 fry, 1 onion ring, 2 dilly bars, 1, I don't know. All courtesy of Mr. Buffett.
And you didn't hear this from me. It's a pretty strange coincidence that his transition date is right in the middle of the 2008 presidential campaign.
I know you're super busy, but I'm sure you're starting to think about who would be your best running mate.
No, I know I haven't actually declared a running mate yet, Bill, but I'm not sure politics is really for you.
Hey, it's Bill.
Bill Shatner of Star Trek?
No, the other Bill.
Bill Clinton?
The man has a tenacious work ethic. No one is sure if he even sleeps.
I've always been a startup kind of guy, so that's my next big idea. What do you think?
Well, solar-powered nanorobots grown from Justin Timberlake stem cells are intriguing, but they're really not my area of expertise. But we've got a new partner here at the firm who I know can help you out.
Oh, hey, Bill. No, it's not an inconvenient time. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that was a good one.
You trust what you do.
Of course, we'll miss him in the daily brainstorming meetings. He's always been an innovator, really inspiring all of us to think creatively about the future. And we'll be the first to give credit where credit is due.
Oh, absolutely. Microsoft Bob, his idea, all his.
Like I said, we've been planning for this. But he's still Bill, and we'll miss seeing him in the hallway every day. Hey, buddy, see you tomorrow at the board meeting.
And all tech markets remain steady as Bill Gates completed his historic last full day at Microsoft. Personal note, all of us here at NBC News will miss reporting every night on this brilliant, powerful, let's face it, sexy and good-looking leader of men and women who just doesn't believe in paying more than $7 for a haircut. I'm Brian Williams in New York. Good night.
We had a lot of fun making that, but of course there won't be any shortage of things to do in terms of the Microsoft work and the foundation. Microsoft has great people like Craig Mundy and Ray Ozzie stepping up to take over the engineering review work, and so all of that's in very good hands. Well, now let's talk about software, how it's become very important and where it's going in the future. Back in 1975, when Microsoft was started, there was no software industry. In fact, the only software there was ran on big, expensive machines. And there were very few of them, and simply used by governments and corporations. And if anything, they were viewed as the opposite of empowering. They were viewed as something that would send you a bad check or keep track of you in some way that was unattractive. So the very idea that computing would change, become inexpensive, become personal, and actually lead to the best tool ever created for communicating, for creating new things, for collaborating together, that was not something that was broadly accepted. And yet, with the prediction by Gordon Moore that the microprocessor would get exponentially more transistors every 2 years, Paul Allen and I saw that a key missing element would be software. And not just software that we would do, but software that could run on a platform and explode into an industry that would provide literally tens of thousands of solutions. Initially, that meant BASIC, running on all the early machines, the Commodore PET TRS-80. Then it meant MS-DOS, running on the new 16-bit machines, including the IBM PC. And then in the 90s, it meant Windows with graphical user interface. And the explosion of software companies has really fulfilled the dream that we had there. There was a heroic assumption that we could get millions of machines out, because only by having that type of installed base could somebody spend tens of millions to write software and yet be able to offer it at very low prices and still be able to invest in constantly improving that software. Once we got that going, it was a virtuous cycle. The more software was written, the more machines would get sold, they'd become lower price, and then that would allow there to be more software written. And that cycle today has driven the sale of over 1 billion personal computers. And so those are now all targets for whatever creative ideas people have in software. The cell phone is becoming a software-driven device, traditionally just about voice, but now if you take, say, the upper 20% of those phones, they really are as powerful as personal computers of just a few years ago. And so there again, we get a platform for doing creative software. There's about 2 billion cell phones out there, and so over the next 5 years, as all of those become rich enough for software-driven activity, there will be incredible innovation as to what runs on that platform. We have about 300 billion people in the world connected up to broadband. And an interesting milestone of just a few weeks ago is that there's now more broadband users in China than in the United States. And it's not like the United States is going to catch up anytime. When you have 1.3 billion people, you can create big markets, and once you get ahead, you'll stay ahead. And it just illustrates what a global business this is, where the ideas, the invention, the use of the software and hardware is happening all over the world. And so we're really poised to drive things forward and take on new capabilities. I've talked about the last 10 years as being the first digital decade. That is, as the internet got to a certain critical mass, that every company and many individuals felt that the internet was the way they wanted to exchange information, to transact business, to organize their schedule, to keep track of their classes. 10 years ago, there was very little of that. Photographs were film-based. Commerce was paper-based. Now, certainly for a younger group in rich countries, it's kind of common sense that use the internet to learn, to look things up. And every year, that simply grows and grows. A particular year, it's evolutionary. But if you take those changes over a period of a decade, it can become very dramatic. And so let's think now about, in this second digital decade, the 10 years starting now, what kinds of activities will change in a very profound way? Well, the first thing to note is that the miracle of the hardware advances are not slowing down. The number of transistors we'll get will still go up exponentially. The cost of disk storage will still go down exponentially, making things like huge image databases or videos practical to store, whereas it would have been impractical and overly expensive only 4 or 5 years ago. The bandwidth that we get both in the wired world across optic fiber and the wireless bandwidth will also be going up at a pretty incredible rate. So these quantitative elements that often enable us to tackle new frontiers are working in our favor. There's one small footnote where we're going to have to be a little more clever, which is that the transistors we're being given aren't going to be running at higher clock speeds. The 3 to 5 gigahertz type speeds we have are likely to be about the most unless there's some surprise breakthrough. And so we'll be given multi-cores and for the first time have to write our software so it can run across all of those. There's some great work here at this university about how do we make that more approachable, but still a very tough problem that Microsoft and many others are going to have to make some real advances so that we're not forcing programmers to get down at the low level and write that parallel code that is both error-prone and very difficult to do. Another change will be in graphics quality and screen pervasiveness. Screens will be cheap enough that every wall, every horizontal surface, we can think about projecting information onto it. And it'll be at very high resolution and totally available. One of the most profound changes will be the way that we interact with these devices. Up until now, the overwhelmingly dominant way of interaction has been keyboards of various sizes and some type of pointing device. And that's going to still be there. It's a great way to interact. But we'll be complementing that with a variety of new interaction techniques, all of which I refer to as natural user interface. What does this mean? It means touch. It means the pen, where you can take notes and write your ink and have it either be passed along as ink or be recognized. I believe that every student will have a tablet computer where they have their textbooks and they take notes and do work with other students using that tablet device. My daughter goes to a school where everybody uses a tablet. Actually, it's over a decade now that this school has pioneered this, and the change in the ease of learning and the way they do the curriculum, actually eliminating textbooks, has been phenomenal. We have several million students now learning at the high school level that way, and as the hardware improves, the software improves, we expect to make that almost a common sense way of getting at the material. You know, all of us have already seen for things like the print-based encyclopedia that the online equivalents in CARD or Wikipedia are just far superior. The animation, the links, the interactivity, the video that you can get make it a much, much better learning experience. Natural interface also includes speech, and this has been a holy grail of software development for many decades, but finally we're gathering enough data, enough processing power, enough machine learning techniques to make it accurate enough to move it into the mainstream. A group called Tell Me, that's now part of Microsoft, actually puts speech recognition software on the phone. So if you just name a location or a product or anything, it will bring it right up on that cell phone screen the answer that you're interested in. The reason they've gotten so good at this is they actually take the information phone calls from most of the big phone companies. And so they have this database that they've been able to examine and do machine learning against and refine their algorithms. And people are kind of amazed because it's a lot simpler than using the buttons on the cell phone. Another element of natural interface is that we'll have cameras around that will be doing visual recognition, understanding who's there. We have a product called Roundtable for video conferencing that the camera creates, stitches a 360-degree image, but also knows who the speaker is and does direction just like a human with a camera would if they were trying to direct that conference. So this recognition of people, of gestures, is getting to a very, very rich level. Another area of research that Waterloo is one of the leading universities driving good work. What this means is that we can take something like a table, and by just putting a personal computer and a camera underneath, we can see your hand gestures or any objects that you put down on that. And that's called Microsoft Surface. We have it out in our developer kits for partners today. And this will end up being used in a retail store environment, in a hotel lobby, but most importantly, in an office and at home. And so we'll talk about not the computer on the desk, but the computer in the desk. In fact, the office, in less than 10 years, all those horizontal surfaces, you'll be able to bring out your schedules and your sales results and your to-do list, your calendar, whatever you want to browse to, and just point to those things and expand them, move them around. That'll be true on your desk. You can just take your pen and put little notes on things, circle things, say who you want them sent to. Likewise, your whiteboard will be a display. Any part of it, you can have a teleconference with somebody, but you can bring up the business results, share those together, work on those. The device you carry in your hand will just be an extension of that, where you can select things and control things. And so the cell phone will just be a general purpose little screen that's nearby for you to touch. And so vision capabilities will be built in. The software platform will include speech, touch, vision, all of these things just as a common sense capability. And so we need to make it easy to write applications that scale down from this small screen to this kind of wall-sized, any surface environment that'll prevail in both the home and the office environment. And the platform won't just be one device like it's been right now. When you write software, you'll want to write it in a way that it can run on multiple of those devices. It can track the user in terms of their preferences, so that if they have the application on their phone, they go to one PC and use it, go to another PC and use it. It's all just there. Now, this will be facilitated by the fact that as internet-connected devices, these will be able to get at data and computing services in the internet, we say in the cloud, that Microsoft and others provide. Storage capability with rich backup, database, mapping services, payment services, trust directories, all of those things will be APIs that these applications that are highly responsive, using natural interface, can call on. And so if you change the state of the application, that'll get pushed up to the internet somewhere, and then if you pick another device, all of that information comes down and is available to you. So it's a bit of a different software platform. And for many applications, it needs to be a much higher level platform, so that we're not writing low-level declarative procedural code. You know, today, the applications for businesses end up being hundreds of thousands or millions of lines of code. We need, through declarative techniques, a order of magnitude reduction in that, so that the correctness, the flexibility, the cost, all of these things are dramatically changed in the world of software. And now we have many techniques that promise, through rich data modeling and deep declarative analysis, to be able to let us program in a very different way. In fact, almost every activity software will touch. You know, today, if you're an IT manager, you're thinking about which program runs on which machine and where files are. A software layer will eliminate that. And so you'll just have a pool of machines like we or Google have today for our search type algorithms. We'll generalize that, and including the deep requirements that business have, and make it easy to write a software service where you don't even think about how it deals with hardware failure, or how it runs across the many machines. Our runtime layers, service layers, will just do that for you automatically. For somebody who's an information worker, this ability to really analyze data, to see patterns, to visualize things in rich ways, will be commonplace. Today, information workers really are information starved. If they want to go back and find things, find related things, they want to take external data, internal data, see that combined in a rich way, they just can't do it. They're often looking at sales numbers that are printed out, and as soon as they see that it's big or small, they should want to dive in and see that detail. And then when they get an insight about the time period, the location, the product, they should want to circle that and collaborate with someone else in the company to talk about what does it imply, what is the best practice, what is the problem. And the tools today don't make them very effective. Today, a lot of products are designed physically. In the future, more and more, they'll be designed digitally, so you can try things out, work with your vendors, make the specifications very, very strong, and the software basis will really drive that to happen. Even activities in the home, things like TV, which has been channel-oriented, passive, broadcast-based, will be delivered over the internet. Today, there's about 1 million users through AT&T and other providers getting TV through the internet. It's being delivered in a fairly traditional way now, but because we have these set-top boxes that have video game type capability, and we have servers with rich services, very quickly, now that we're at critical mass, the content providers will take things like news and let you see the subjects that you're interested in. Take a topic like the Olympics and let you browse and see something more in depth that catches your interest. Present to you the sports that you care about. An election where you want to dive in and see different results and interact with it. A game show, sports show. The divide between internet video and sort of mainstream satellite cable video, that will go away, so that we'll automatically put into your guide things that may be obscure to others that might be interesting to you. You know, a relative's sports activity, even at, say, the high school level, if somebody was there with an HD camera and just posts it to the internet. Or in the future, if your courses are videoed, you know, it might highlight the one that you've missed and that maybe you should go and see, and be right there in your guide to make it easy for you to get. So the TV experience will be utterly different than it is today. Taking the paper-based things and putting them into the tablet or these highly readable screens, that will be a big change. So across almost every industry and activity, software will change what goes on. An element of this is that the sciences themselves, who historically have been dependent on mathematics as sort of the handmaiden of description, now will be more and more using rich software bases. If you look at astronomy, all these observations made at different points, different times, different wavelengths, pulling that into a database that can be queried. This is a huge project that Microsoft Research is involved in to take the nature of those queries and the organization of that data and let somebody who cares about astronomy navigate and test out their ideas on a broad basis. It's even more clear in biology that you have so much genomic and proteomic data, and organizing that in a way so people can see, has anybody done an experiment that would be valuable and interesting to me? What were the conditions? What does that data look like? Just the size of these databases is quite phenomenal. And yet we all know that we need to do machine learning against patient outcomes and see trends in a way that we don't today. We need to get rid of the paperwork and streamline these various things. And so biology will be a very different science because of the computer enablement. For my foundation, the focus in health and biology is on the disease of the poorest. And take something like malaria. We will take computation and do modeling so that we understand the interventions that can actually lead to elimination. In fact, we've gotten very optimistic that some of our innovations in combination can dramatically reduce the malaria map. But before we go and put hundreds of millions into that, we will use deep computer simulation to make sure that we really see how these things come together and what the impact is. And so the use of software broadly for all of the sciences and broadly for all these different industries really means there's an immense opportunity and immense challenge in terms of people who drive these frontiers forward. The advance in computer science has come through a mix of commercial investment and university investment. And one of the greatest things for Microsoft was the milestone now 15 years ago where we could start to create our own research group and make sure that research group would have strong relationships with the top universities around the world doing great work. That's really been a huge success. In fact, I'm always telling companies that they underinvest in research. We're also a very loud voice to say to governments, the US government, the Canadian government, that funding research is a very worthwhile investment because of the kind of job creation and innovation and the huge effects that tends to have. Today there's some scary trends in terms of the number of students going into these fields. I was talking with the faculty this morning about some of the innovative things they're doing, and the grant from my foundation, of course, is aimed at understanding that better and being smarter about showing that these opportunities in this field, these are fun jobs. They're not jobs where you're just in a cubbyhole writing code your whole life. They are about changing the world, learning about users, working with other people in a very strong way. Now, making sure this tie between Microsoft, who's spending over $6 billion a year, and the universities is strong, both with the computer science department and other departments. That's something we put a lot of energy into. And so now we're reaching out to scientists in many domains and saying to them, what kind of software would help you with your work? Biology is a great example of this, and I just wanted to show you one little example for you to get a sense of it. And this is a researcher at Harvard, Jeff Lichtman, who's doing some work on the brain. And let's look at a little video clip of the challenge that he has.
I'd like to tell you today about an exciting collaboration that's just starting up between me and several of my colleagues in the Center for Brain Science at Harvard University, and another group at Harvard University in the Initiative for Innovative Computing with Microsoft. We know less about our brains, actually, than any other part of our body, and I would even go farther than that. I would say we know less about our brains than anything that human beings know about. It's that mysterious. For us to understand many disease processes and the way the normal brain works, we really need a wiring diagram of a brain. You would need a hard disk that is approximately 1 million petabytes. And many of you don't know what a petabyte is, I bet. A petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. And a terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. So one human brain requires 1,000 billion gigabyte hard disks. So we're going to start even smaller than that and look at a little cubic millimeter of a mouse brain. That's about a petabyte of data. That's almost manageable today, and we've built a radically new kind of microtome to shave off one layer after another in little volumes like that, put them on tape, and then image them. And we were very pleased that Microsoft already has developed several tools that are really wonderful to get us started. And I want to start.
So the tool that we've created here is called HD View. And you know, I know you're all fascinated with the mouse brain, so let's take a look at this thing. You know, here's the image. This is one of these slices. And what we've done with the image libraries is make it very efficient to both step through, you know, magnify, pan, and zoom through these things and see the rich data. Here we're seeing layers on the side. I can, you know, view that as a whole, or I can take any individual layer and decide that's the one I want to look at and just go through and see what's going on there. Perhaps most interestingly, this is stored in a very structured way. So the algorithms that take the data and do work against it are very, very efficient. So here you see some software that did some boundary analysis. Here's some software that took and looked at adjacencies and starts to map out different types of features that are in the mouse brain. And you can see that's filled in as it's decided what type of connection, what type of neuron, where it's going. And it's this level of rich data and this level of very efficient analysis that can take these billions and billions of connections and get us to the point where we start to reason about how do these connections change over time, what do they mean? And of course, as Jeff said, this is one of the toughest problems of all, but therefore it's a fun one for software people to take on and think about the scale of the data and the ways that you want to manipulate it. And there are many examples like this as you go across science area by science area where software's got to help out. And these people can help us push our software to limits that we didn't before. And often that actually is valuable in commercial areas as well. Some of the visualization runtimes we're creating, I think, will have very broad applicability. And what we need to do here is get people from a very young age who can have access to computers and the best tools. Recently, this week, we came up with a thing where even high school students can now get all the professional tools for free, Visual Studio, Expression, things like that. Move up from them, where even at high school, you can get people like myself and Paul Allen are pursuing something new and different, all the way up to the top departments and the kind of software tools and advances they need and be part of a dialogue so that we're doing our development in the direction that will make a big impact for them. One last topic I want to touch on, given this very excited, optimistic view I have of software and its impact, is to talk a little bit about the impact tiered by levels of wealth. We can take the 6 billion people on the planet and break it into the richest 2 billion, the middle 2 billion, and the bottom 2 billion. And in some ways, we need to specialize our tactics of how we make sure technology can make a difference by looking at the situations of each of these groups. For the top group, the normal market mechanism of, you know, what's a good piece of software, what's a good piece of hardware, what do businesses want to be empowered, is working very, very well. And so that's just the natural course and speed that's going to happen very effectively. Particularly as you get to that bottom tier and you're talking about environments without electricity, often without a schoolroom, no access through roads, that is a much tougher problem. And yet, in a sense, making innovation for those people is more important than for the top 2 billion. And we do have a bit of a dilemma, no matter whether it's computer technology or medicines or anything, that the way that markets work is people who have no money essentially have no voice. They have no influence in terms of what the market does. And so it's only through some combination of enlightened value systems that particularly the richest should have, through actions of their governments or philanthropy or universities really thinking about this, that those problems will get solved. I'll give you an illustration of this out of the world of medicines. Malaria kills a million children every year. That's a number that's going up because of drug resistance. And yet the amount of money until a few years ago that went into malaria research was less than a tenth as the amount that went into baldness research. Now, why are we working on baldness? It hasn't killed anyone. Well, those top 2 billion, they are sending market signals. Cure my baldness. But these million children who are dying down here are not sending any type of market signal because they have no money to buy these medicines. And so you get an allocation of the world's best scientists on one problem and not on the other problem. And there are dozens and dozens of examples like that. I managed to complete my time at college, not enough to graduate, but I managed to complete it without getting much of an awareness of the condition of the bottom 2 billion. I just didn't know much about it. I knew, hey, maybe they had a little less food, maybe a few less books, but just not a real picture of what it was like, particularly in terms of health and population growth, and the things that really create almost a trap unless special work is done to change that. I remember sometime after I'd left the university, I was reading about the world, and an article mentioned a disease called rotavirus that kills 500,000 children a year. And I said, well, this can't be right. I've never heard of it. You know, how could there be something that I've never even heard of? At least malaria I've heard of. You know, who's working on this? What are the top people working on it? Why isn't this just standing out? Well, there was nothing being done because it is a disease that doesn't kill anybody in the top 2 billion. That is, our access to doctors and sanitary systems and various things are so well developed that that's not really of interest, and so nobody was doing it. And so that definitely is what got me thinking about as I wanted to take the resources that I was lucky enough to have through the success of Microsoft and get those back to society in the most impactful way. Got me thinking, okay, that is a missing thing. There's no part of governments that try and discover those drugs or get those systems to work. That's definitely something that can be done. But I'd say there's an equal opportunity in terms of taking technology, not just medicine, technology, and having it help out these people. This morning I was talking with one of the faculty people here who's doing great work on this, and Microsoft is one of the backers of that work. We also have a theme in our lab in India, the research lab there, that they really go out and study these groups. And at first it's pretty daunting because you find out about how most of the brute force things of just, you know, make the PC cheaper and hand it to them, those things don't work at all. The connectivity's not there, the electricity, the training. It is not, for that bottom 2 billion, something where we just take what we're doing and scale down the price. It's always good to get the price down, but that's probably most interesting for that middle 2 billion, and it's great. We should keep doing that. We need a 10-cent PC, and if they spend any money, it should be on the software. But in education or in community centers, the software is free, so that's pretty straightforward. But we can do things where, in terms of helping them learn about agricultural techniques, either some way that you cleverly get the video out to a machine, or just take a DVD player out and play it for them. There are ways of using what all of us would think of as low-tech solutions, but they've been thought through in terms of the social context, and that then can have a huge impact. This one thing we did with farmers called Digital Green was we go around and we take a camera and we film farmers doing best practices. And then we take those back, have experts look at them, edit them, pick the very best of those, and then create DVDs that are carried out along with the little DVD player, battery operated. And in some cases, the TVs are already there. In some cases, you take it with you. And play for these people, the farmer talking about the best practices. We were able to increase adoption of new techniques by a factor of 3 over the previous approach and to lower the cost of that system. And what this means in terms of livelihoods is very dramatic. Your ability to survive a season that has drought depends on what your output was in the previous several seasons. And these farming techniques often can double the output of a small landholder. And so it was phenomenal. In fact, what happened was all the local farmers wanted to be chosen. It was better than American Idol, except it was Farmer Idol. They wanted to show their techniques. And it created this whole virtuous cycle of people learning from each other and trying to outdo each other. And even the farmers who weren't part of the target group out in the rural areas were coming up to see the videos and use those. So it had a much broader impact than we expected. And so on this front, in terms of the poorest 2 billion, I would just say 2 things. One is I'd encourage you to have a much better awareness during your university years of the situation of those people than I had. One way to do that is by going there, but also now with the internet, of course, the ability to explore and learn is quite phenomenal, even if you don't get a chance to do that. And the second thing is I'd encourage you to take one aspect of it, and it doesn't even matter what, in terms of disease or technology, microfinance, whatever, and learn a lot about it and think about how, in terms of giving or volunteering time, somewhere in your career that can be important to you. There is one other element of this that I've talked about at the World Economic Forum, which is to get businesses more involved in these things as well. If we could take the very best businesses like Nestle in food or GlaxoSmithKline in drugs, Microsoft in technology, if we could get all the businesses to be as good as the best at these kind of outreach things, it would have a very dramatic effect. And so we need recognition for the companies that are driving this forward. We need new ideas. How can we use the cell phone? What should the banking organizations do? And there's a lot talk now where even though the normal market mechanism doesn't work, we can take our value system and rewards and very efficient things done on an internet-type basis and drive businesses to provide some extra work into this area. And that's what I refer to as creative capitalism. So even here, where the problems often seem daunting, particularly if you never knew how bad it was at first, it's like, woo, do I really have to learn about this? But once you level set and look at, okay, over the last decade, things have improved a lot. Yes, you can take a few countries where they haven't, but in most countries they have, and we need to look at the ones that have been tough and see what the particular factors are, including the health things that have happened there. So even for this piece, I am incredibly optimistic. It requires values and involvement to drive it at the right speed, but the impact there will be even greater for this top 2 billion. So I hope that gives you a sense of why I think the next decade of software will be phenomenal. I'm actually envious of you to have the background you have, to be at this great university, and to have the opportunity to really drive all these changes I talked about. So it'll be exciting to see what you're able to do. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Coleman. I'm not as famous as Bill Gates, but I am Dean of the world-famous Faculty of Mathematics here at the University of Waterloo. And I'd like to welcome you all to this event, and I particularly welcome Bill to visit us again, a second visit in 3 years. We're very happy about that. In fact, you're welcome to visit every year. Turns out you do help with our recruiting.
Good.
I wanted to mention, Bill, just to be sure that we do have a lot of young faces here, a lot of students from University of Waterloo, also a lot from high schools. I think over 200 students from local high schools. and 22 schools being represented. I knew you wanted to look at a lot of young faces. They're here. We have a few older folks as well, but we stuck them way at the back out of harm's way, so no problem. So what we want to do is do some questions and answers. We did collect some questions from some of the students here, and I have copies of these questions. I don't know if we'll get through them all. But what we'll do is I'll read out the name, and if I read out your name, please stand up. A mic will come running over to you, and then read out your question, and I will repeat the question afterwards. Be sure it's recorded properly, and give Bill a bit more time to figure out a good answer. Okay, and that's how we'll proceed. So let me begin with the president of MathSoc here at the University of Waterloo, Natalie Owen. Right here at the front, mic number 4.
Johnson mentioned, Waterloo and Microsoft have a strong relationship with many alumni working at Microsoft over the years. With the Canadian-US borders tightening and a serious decrease in the number of work visas being issued, do you see Microsoft investing in Canada on the innovation research side and tapping into the talent still at home?
Okay, so I can just repeat it, just a Canadian-type question. As President Johnson mentioned, Waterloo and Microsoft have a strong relationship with many alumni working at Microsoft over the years. With the Canadian-US borders tightening and a serious decrease in the number of work visas being issued, do you see Microsoft investing in Canada on the innovation research side and tapping into the talent still at home?
Basically, yes. There's many things that need to be done here. One is that there should be a free flow of talent from the U.S. to Canada and Canada to the U.S. If there's a bright person who wants a job, it shouldn't be hard to go across the border and do that. We should make it as seamless as possible. The U.S. government currently has this H-1B visa thing, which I consider the worst disaster. If I could just change one law in the U.S., it would be this idea of, hey, let smart people come. Fortunately for Canada, the rules here, although they're not totally simple, are much better. And so one thing that Microsoft did recently is we put a new development center up in Vancouver, and the government's been great in terms of allowing these smart people who are being paid very well to come there. And so we're looking at what kind of scale we're going to go to with that. It's got its own merits in terms of drawing, making it easy for Canadians to come to it and being in an area that's been rated as one of the best to live in. But we also want to fix the problem. Now, Microsoft does a lot of things for the co-op students or for people who take jobs there to deal with all the paperwork and things and make it so they don't have to deal with that. So we still have a wonderful flow of great Waterloo students into our engineering groups.
Okay. Next question, Ashwini. Oh, over there. Which mic is that? Number 2. Okay.
About 7 years ago, you said that within the next 10 years, wireless networking would become commonplace. This has indeed come true. With the emergence of global information society, what kind of infrastructure should be put into place in developing nations to take advantage of this wireless technology? And what do you predict will be the next technology evolution 10 to 15 years from now, comparable to wireless networking? Also, what is the biggest challenge facing Microsoft as a competitive company in the next 5 years?
Okay, so several questions in one. That's a very sneaky. All right, I'll read it again. About 7 years ago, you said, Bill, that within the next 10 years, wireless networking would become commonplace. This has indeed become true. With the emergence of a global information society, what kind of infrastructure should be put into place in developing nations to take advantage of wireless technologies? And what do you predict will be the next technology evolution 10 to 15 years from now, comparable to wireless networking? And what is the biggest challenge facing Microsoft as a competitive company in the next 5 years?
Well, wireless will keep improving at quite a rapid rate. 802.11n is the next generation, and that's a big advance because it means we can take, for example, high-definition video and send it around inside an office environment or inside a home environment. And of course, video is a big, important application in the home setting. Once you get past 802.11n, it's not clear what the next thing will be, but there certainly is spectrum, if people are smart about it, that should let us go to another factor of 4 or so in terms of unlicensed spectrum. Bandwidth availability in developing countries, in most cases, it's a very tough story. Africa doesn't have enough optic fiber going into it. It doesn't have good pricing in its cities. It doesn't have good outreach into the hinterlands. There are some ways that wireless mesh type approaches that are inexpensive can help us a bit with this, but we shouldn't be naive. It's not like some magic thing. Just the number of video feeds that you can push down into Africa is ridiculously low. And so whenever people say, okay, well, let's have the courses be available to them, it's being blocked. And it could take another decade for that to happen. Asia's, in most places, is a much better story. This is more about economics and politics than it is about the technology piece. It should be solvable, and my foundation is going to work with others to see what can be done there. You will see on a worldwide basis the amount of bandwidth you have in urban areas will be much larger than as you move out to rural areas. It won't be one set of bandwidth for everyone. And so that's an interesting policy question, just like it was with what are telephone rates in various locations throughout a country. In terms of what the big new thing is, I'd say leading the way in natural user interface and these new programming platforms. Those are the things that we've decided to bet on. So if it's another thing, then we're in trouble. As far as competition goes, we've always had fun competition. I mean, do you remember WordPerfect and Ashton Tate and you don't? Netscape and Sun and today you'd have to say that Google and Apple are probably the two that are executing the best in terms of neat new things they're doing, and that's fantastic. I mean, take search, the great computer science we're bringing to bear to build something that will be far better than what Google offers today, that really is quite different in terms of letting you deal with structured information and having software value added. That is spurring us on to do wonderful work. We need to make sure that they don't block the advertising platform so that there's not room for two players in that, but we'll do our best on that on all fronts.
Okay, next question, Ben Best, president of UW Engineers Without Borders. Right at the front here. Mic number 2.
In my own experience overseas, I faced many challenges with the implementation and adoption of simple technologies that my formal technical education did not prepare me for. I'm going to switch up the question a bit because you sort of answered my initial question. Okay. But what can universities do to better prepare technical students to work with technology in different social contexts?
Why don't you just go ahead,
yeah,
since
great.
you changed the question on me.
No, and the mic's working well. Well, I think it's important to learn about those contexts. The group that we have in India that is very focused on this actually has an equal number of social scientists as computer scientists. And one thing they do is they go in and interview the farmers and the kids and then translate it so the rest of us can see those videos and understand it's how tough. And they went and documented 10 failed computer projects, which is super important. You naively thinking, oh, nobody's ever done this before. We're the first one to think. We can go and do this. Hey, this is ground that's been tread very heavily. And so avoiding those mistakes is of critical importance. And so I think we can get communities on the web talking about these different things. It is an example where at some point you just have to pick something and go and do it and see what the impact can be. And I think it is a great thing for public-private partnership where we could take a few of these projects and make sure if Waterloo wants to have students engage in these things, have that connection with our lab in India or someplace around the world so that they have the context and then at some point they can actually go see their work in action.
Okay. Next question is from a student, a high school student at Bluevale, Samantha McIntyre. Over there, mic number 2 again.
Is there a technology that was developed in the past 10 years that truly surprises you in its effectiveness or popularity?
Yeah, if you asked me that question at various points in time, I'd give a different answer, fortunately. I'd say the online advertising virtuous cycle, that you're in a context where you want to know about people who offer products, and that would become such a gold mine of revenue. A typical user in the US and Canada, your search provider is making about $80 a year off of you. And it's the only place where you get advertising where you don't get something in return. You don't get a movie, you don't get a newspaper or something like that. And that's because there's not two providers that are viewed as equally good, and they're competing for your attention by taking some portion of that $80 and giving you something in return. But it's amazing the impact of those advertising economics and what that's going to be over 10 years as more countries are driving advertising, and there's just more internet traffic. That's really surprised me. And so a little bit we're playing catch up on that, but we see a path to do that. I'd say that's the main one. Natural user interface I've always believed in. It's taking longer for things like the ink and pen to catch on than I expected, or voice to catch on, but I'm stubborn. We're not giving up. 20 years from now, if they still haven't caught on, we'll still be investing in those things, but that's not going to happen.
Okay, next question is from Chris Duffy from Faculty of Math. Mic number 3.
Changes, the pace at which it changes and improves is getting faster. It's been 40 years since the creation of the internet, and modern society would have trouble functioning without it. Assuming Moore's law continues to hold, what can you imagine slowing down the rate of proliferation?
Okay, so I will repeat this because it wasn't quite as clear, perhaps because of the mic. As technology changes, the pace at which it changes and improves is getting faster. It has been 40 years since the creation of the internet, and modern society would have trouble functioning without it. Assuming Moore's law continues to hold, what can you imagine slowing down at this rate of proliferation?
Well, I think the rate of innovation will continue to rise, and it'll be driven by what our economic and value system say to us is important to get solved. Is it important to solve cancer? Is it important to solve Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, malaria, TB? I think the deep insights we'll get from the data and computational platforms and new tools of gathering information should make us very optimistic that, say, in 20 years' time, we'll solve those things. In terms of broad use of technology, obviously we need to make it simpler and simpler. Today in your living room, even without a computer, you may have multiple remote controls, and it's very opaque when you push one of those buttons what's going on. There should just be the ability to talk or gesture and have the screen really explain what's going on and not have to think about the low-level connectivity. That's happening as we get that magic set-top box that provides the computing, video game, TV, all that richness just in one very simple thing. So the marketplace is a good corrector. If products are too complex and people aren't that interested in them, those companies will fail. Somebody will come along and do it better. Because of natural interface, I don't see that we're hitting a boundary in terms of the rate that we can roll this stuff out and the rate that we have impact. I don't see in the next 10 or 20 years that slowing down at all. As you get into that 20-year time frame, the level of the intelligence of the device is one of the big questions. Will it be super intelligent and able to help make decisions or autonomously make decisions? You have people like Ray Kurzweil who would say, yes, that will be very strong. So there's an interesting boundary out there somewhere. But in the 20-year time frame, we probably won't run into that. We'll just be providing a better and better tool that people will be empowered by.
Okay, next question is Harrison Gross from St. David's. I just have to read the mic number. Number 4. Go ahead.
Do you believe that it's more important for students and potential employees to diversify their skill sets or to specialize in a certain area or field?
Okay. So the question is specialize or diversify?
Well, this is a famous question about what the university curriculum or requirements should be like. And I don't think there's a simple answer. When I was a student in the dark ages, they had this thing where they divided the courses into natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities, and they wanted you to take some of each. Well, what that meant was that if you signed up for computer courses, then you couldn't take physics or chemistry or physiological psychology or any of those things. You could take, Love in the Western World and Dostoevsky and some of these philosophical stuff, which was interesting. But you couldn't take these other sciences. Now, I solved it by never signing up for any computer science courses and just taking the other ones and just learning that stuff on my own time. But you can create weird distortions if you're not careful about how you do these requirements. The truth is, even within computer science, the breadth of things that you could learn, database, graphics, machine learning, theory of algorithms, it's so broad today. My basic response to this would be that you should take one or two things where you get in depth, where you take, say, some computer science thing and you actually understand the efficiency of the system, the trade-offs, what is hard about that system, what is the model of what's going on inside that system. Likewise, I would take something in the social sciences, some period of history, some political controversy, and learn a lot about, World War II, Victorian England, and feel like you have a real sense of the dynamics of what went on, why things didn't go in a different way. So I'd pick 3 or 4 things that are kind of broad in nature and then get particularly in depth on those things so you have a sense of, okay, the people who work in this field, this is the kind of thing they think about. These are the models they have. Here's where the breakthroughs were that allowed them to see this in a richer fashion. And then, fortunately for all of you, you're in a generation where all these courses are going to be online and basically free. I'm taking solid-state physics from MIT. MIT doesn't know it, but they have all those courses online, and it's well taught. It's very interesting, and more of those things are coming online. So anything you don't learn during your university career, if you think, "Gosh, shucks, I should have learned database," it's going to be out there and available. So you are far more empowered in terms of your ongoing education than any generation has ever been.
Bill, you forgot to mention always study math when you're describing it.
Math is the most fundamental. No, honestly, it's not a setup question. The reason you can understand a broad set of things, frankly, is if you understand math. So.
All right. Okay, next question also from a high school student, Mackenzie Kibler from St. David's. Mic number 4 again.
Okay, so over the years, the internet has been costly for some. Will the internet ever become free for anyone to use, like a public library?
Basic question, will the internet become free like a public library?
Well, Microsoft and my foundation had a project that was executed in the United States and also in Canada to help make sure that libraries had personal computers connected to the internet. And it wasn't just putting the technology in, it was really finding out who was coming in. Did they need big print because they couldn't read the small text? Did they want to send photos to a relative? Were they looking for a job? Did they want to learn word processing? And so we took, for a period of 5 years, and really studied all those people coming in, made sure the software was set up the right way. Now that project, because it was so successful in the US and Canada, it's been taken to Mexico, Chile, Botswana, Latvia, Romania. We're just scaling it out. Even now, we're doing that in parts of India. And so the idea is that it's like literacy. What did we do for kids who couldn't afford to buy as many books? We created libraries, and we tried to make those pervasive enough that everybody could get to a library. If the internet and the ability to access that is like the new literacy, then we need to make it pervasive, and community centers and libraries are a great way of doing that. In terms of your direct question, for people in their own home, the fact is that these network providers have real costs to build out these networks. They benefit from volume, they benefit from innovation, and so perhaps the prices can come down somewhat even as the bandwidth goes up. But I wouldn't say that for an arbitrary person at home, you're likely to ever have free internet. There'll be some network costs that you're paying, but if you can't afford it, then society should create a place where you can go in and participate.
Okay, this is the last question, and it's a pretty good one, I think. It's from Ryan McCartney. Ryan McCartney, somewhere here? Well, I'm going to read it anyways. It's a good question. As a serial entrepreneur from the beginning, how do you find comfort and inspiration in working daily in a large global company with much structure and control? Do you ever get urges to get back to your entrepreneurial roots, starting up new ventures in new and exciting markets?
Well, I certainly think the phase of the company when we were small was an interesting phase. I got to look at every line of code, and so we maintained very good quality at that time. But I think the notion of small companies and some definition of entrepreneurship really over-romanticizes the small company. If you want to do visual recognition, if you want to do machine translation, if you want to create a graphics platform where people can do amazing games, that most of that just can't be done in a small company. You've got to be able to do long-term research, work on a very global basis, be able to get the word out about the things that you're doing. And so the technology ecosystem is a very broad one that needs lots of startups. Some of those startups will go on and have a life of their own long-term. Some of them will fail. Some of them, very appropriately, should be bought by larger companies who can take those people and those ideas and put them into a broader context. And so when I'm thinking, hey, let's get every student to use a tablet computer, I don't say to myself, oh, great, I'll do a startup and do that. No, I need Microsoft research in India, Beijing, Cambridge. I need relationships. There's great work here at Waterloo on doing math-type things on that tablet computer. We need to pull all those things together. And so if you really care about the tough problems and impact, often the way to drive those things forward is by being part of a substantial group that's backed with very big resources. Now, many innovative things can happen in a startup environment. Microsoft started that way, and we were able to build some things around it. So no, I don't look back and say, geez, I'd like to do a startup. Every company tries to have the best of both worlds. You try to have the broad impact and the efficiency and the urgency that happens within a small company. If the ideas we backed inside Microsoft, what we call incubations, had the same failure rate as startups, we'd be out of business. We need a much better success rate than startups have, because that's a 90% failure rate, and we like to have more like a 60% failure rate. We're actually achieving something better than that. There are great mechanisms inside companies to let research people not have deadlines or to have incubations that get done on their own. Xbox was an example of an incubation like that. So if you think of the word entrepreneurship in a broad sense that many people do, then there are elements of that that are very important to renew and drive, and using the tools of communication that we've got, these digital tools can help us. I do a thing called a Think Week, where people throughout the company send papers to me about their ideas, any group in the company, and those are online. I read them, I comment on them, I make sure typically 5 other people in the company, if it's any good, read them and comment on them. And so, ideas are percolating from any part of the company. Part of the reason I meet with summer interns or come out and go to college tours is try and hear from the faculty or the nature of the questions that get asked, what people are interested in. So the dynamism of adapting to new things, taking on things that are risky, perhaps those things are even more important in a large company, because you're not like startups where if you fail, it's easy. You just go and start over on something else. So a lot of characteristics that we've worked hard to maintain, but I'm not going back. Even my foundation, if we were a tiny little foundation, we couldn't say, let's go fund AIDS research, knowing that for 10 years there may not be that much progress. It is a very tough problem. Now we have some things like malaria that fortunately turns out to be a little bit easier. Visceral leishmaniasis is even a little bit easier. Nobody's heard of it. It only kills 250,000 people a year. And so we have a range of projects, but only because of our significant set of resources can we take on those ambitious things. So maybe I'm too spoiled to go back and lick my own stamps or something. But
okay, Bill, we want to thank you again for this was very entertaining and very stimulating. All right, go ahead.
Yes.
I can't repeat that
yeah,
question.
fine. No, the question was, you know, how did I have the courage to give up everything and start Microsoft? When you're young, in a sense, you're not risking anything. I mean, Harvard put me on leave. I'm still on leave. Actually, they gave me a degree very recently, but it's an honorary degree. And, you know, what did I have to lose? The main thing that I got worried about was that as I got all my friends to come work for me, and they had, some of them had spouses and kids, that actually did bug me a lot, that if I can't pay this person, I've kind of messed them up. You know, I made them, first they had to move to this Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so I would always do on the envelope this calculation that if none of the customers paid for the next year, could I pay the salaries? And I always wanted to have at least 12 months in the bank. And in fact, the only argument I ever had with Steve Ballmer, who's the CEO now, is when he came in, he looked at how I kind of overcommitted us to do a lot of things and deliver a lot of things. And he said he wanted to hire a lot of people. And I said, no way. You can't do it, because my little calculation of if my customers went bankrupt, which many did, that I wouldn't be able to pay them, wouldn't allow him to hire these 30 people he wanted to. And so for a couple days, he said, you have to. And I said, no, I don't want to. But then we reached this compromise that's worked for the entire 25 years since then, which is I said, okay, we only hire really great people. So you hire as fast as you can and see how quickly you can hire those 30. And we'll see if our level of success in terms of cash in the bank, which is what this equation was driven by, if you can actually get ahead of that, or if the difficulty of hiring and our improvement in success means that we'll never really have to have this discussion. And in fact, you know, today we have $30 billion in the bank, and so Steve is allowed to hire as many of the great people here as he possibly can. So it really wasn't that risky. You know, my parents said, hey, it could fail, you'll go back to school, and I said, sure. Of course I will. And so, you know, now I'm watching physics courses online.
Now, I have to say, we're facing a red button here, which means we've got to stop. Okay, so it was really entertaining and stimulating. Thank you very much. And we have some more wardrobe for you. These are from the students. Program like a rock star.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great.
Hello world, hope you're listening. Forgive me if I'm young or speaking out of turn. There's someone